All right. Hi, welcome. My name's Nick Sard. I'm an assistant professor in the biosci department over in Shinneman. This is my fourth year at SUNY Oswego. And yeah, you know, what I thought I would share today is just kind of I would share my screen and share my Google Drive um, folder system which is what I share with my chair and my personnel committee, and of course that goes up the chain of command. All right, so share screen, share that, and really for what I do is I have a folder system, and I don't know how big that is. I wonder if I can make that any bigger. Large icons, medium icons. That really is a folder per each of the 5 criteria. And along with that, I also, I don't really like that look. I also have a retention letter, an outline of evidence for retention, and my full CV. I'll just say that I'm willing to share this folder system with anybody that would be interested. So just send me an email. I think you could find my email on the Google Calendar invite, but it's just Nicholas Sard at Oswego. SARD is the last name, and in terms of my department has created a statement of personnel criteria, which is, it's kind of a more elaborate description found elsewhere associated with SUNY Oswego and beyond. But what I do for each one of these criteria is kind of consider what my department considers scholarly ability, and then I describe those things that kind of fit into each of those criteria. So for scientists, mastery of subject area doesn't really change all that much. For us in the biological sciences department, it's your PhD, and then I've done some kind of on-call work for some universities, or I was nominated for an early career, this or that, and so those are kind of things that are considered, at least by my department, mastery of subject area. And I like doing the 1 through 5 at the beginning, the names, because that controls, how people kind of flow through the system, or my system. Oh, I see a chat. Once you go list, you never go back. Oh, yes, absolutely, Michael. I like lists. Yeah, absolutely. And for like teaching effectiveness inside of there's other folders. Again, I control them, 1 through 4. And they are kind of sparsely filled. I have all my syllabi for each year and kind of how they've evolved through time. In terms of reflections, I always write a reflection for every one of my classes, kind of considering things I did and didn't do or would like to do next time. I'll, of course, have a summary of student evaluations, which really is kind of just distilled down averages upon averages into a little Excel spreadsheet. And peer evaluations, my department, the person who gives peer evaluations varies. It's just somebody on our curriculum or our personnel committee, and so that's different each time. And then our chair is responsible for giving evaluations too. So he comes in and looks and records every now and then what I'm up to. I've participated in CELT, so I've included a couple PowerPoint slides there, but and you'll find, and I won't go through each one of these, but you'll find that in all my folders, there's subfolders, and then across those there's evidence. But I'd say one thing, I'm in CLAS, so one thing that I heard Kristen say once is like, there's so much information one could provide as evidence, and I really kind of got the message from her that less is more. And in that vein, one thing that I've added in my Google Drive folder is this retention evidence outline, and it's just a little Word document. And really, well, I have this little blurb at the beginning of it that it's just kind of a CV tailored to the 5 criteria. And then I have this one sentence in there, in the interest of brevity, I have provided electronic copies for some pieces of evidence, but if you want more, I'm certainly could get you more. But some of the stuff that I kind of find small potatoes, I just don't include in there. But I have kind of a more detailed description of effectiveness of teaching or scholarly ability. And this document, it grows every year in terms of publications and grants and this and that. But I really like it just because I find it to be a good way to kind of summarize what I've done in the context of the 5 criteria. And then really my retention letter is just a 2-page kind of distillation of that. Like, what have I done over the last year that hits each of the 5 criteria? And usually each one gets a paragraph. And that's kind of the structure of my Google Drive folder for retention. I'll say that, like, in the context of DSI, because I know that's also in the title, I have one of these folders for every year that I've gone have requested like term reappointment. And so for this year, like things that I find along the way, I just save as them to this folder system, and then in January I spend a couple days to organize them and fill them in. Like, I was just going through, because we had to do that whatever that electronic PAR, I can't remember. So I was just going through that system and thinking, well, what haven't I done yet? So I had to write another reflection for my Bio 320 course. And so I've just, it's kind of like my working, like, hey, don't forget to add this into my continuing or my term reappointment folder system for the next time around. And I guess I'll stop there. I'll just say one thing that we kind of realized, Tamara and Rebecca and I, when we talked about this a week or so ago, maybe it's 2 now, was that, like, I'm an assistant professor, and Tamara, I think you're going up for associate, is that right? And then Rebecca's full. So we're kind of at different spots in terms of the system. So I think I'll pass the baton to Tamara unless someone has specific questions.
So hearing no questions, then I will jump in. Thanks, Nick, for that introduction. So I am an associate professor in the Educational Leadership Department in the School of Education. And I think that our sequence here is important because I actually started my processes using the same kind of folder structure that Nick just shared with you. And this spring January, right? I submitted my materials to go up for tenure. And I came to SUNY Oswego having served in the public education system for 27 years. So was familiar with tenure, but certainly not in the higher ed context. And so when I came to the School of Ed, I relied very heavily at first on the 5 criteria and organized my folders around that from the university standpoint, and then had conversations within my department with my chair and also with the dean of the School of Ed to understand some of the parameters around those criteria as they related specifically to my particular field. And so what I found really helpful as I set up the folder structure in Google was to also develop basically my statement. So my teaching statement, my service statement, my scholarship statement, and then every year I just tweaked it and added evidence to it. And then I started archiving evidence so that when I actually last year was the first year that I converted all of my folders into a Google site. So for my 5th year review and now my 6th year review, I made it into a Google site. And so people could look at my archived material or just look at the most current material. And I would say that a theme across this, also less is more. That's what I was told as well. And so, you know, some years I only had 2 or 3 things for a thing, but they were the things that I thought best represented my work in that particular area. So I will share my screen at this point, and can you all see this? Okay, and I'm going to try to move you all out of the way so you can. So I basically used the organizing structure of the criteria. Sorry, I'm trying to move this over so you can see this. So across the top, I have my tabs. So my homepage is basically just saying that this is my tenure portfolio and introducing who I am. And then this is just sort of an overview, but then if you scroll down, I also highlight what is in each of the tabs, the mastery of subject matter, so people can just go to the links they want to, or they're at the head of the page. So then a mastery of subject matter, just highlighted as Nick did, you know, some of the things that maybe are a little bit unique to my particular area. So in addition to my terminal degree, I also have certifications and have also been trained by New York State Education Department as a consultant for some of their review processes. So highlighted some of those things. And then in effectiveness of teaching, scroll to that quickly. Again, so this basic overview, what's my teaching philosophy? If you came to my class, what pedagogy would you see me using? I highlight that first, and then go to those subcategories like student evaluations. And then I have each of the courses I teach across the top. If you just go into one, you can see, I'll scroll down here. I include the actual data on the right. And then on the left, similar to what Nick has done, I sort of analyze, so what's this data telling me? And then I talk about what are some shifts that I've made in the course, either in the syllabus and the learning experiences, in my feedback to students to address the particular feedback that students have given me. And, you know, same with my peer judgments of classroom teaching. I just made a list of who's been in my classroom, who have I co-taught with. So when I advise interns, I have a co-instructor. And so those folks have written letters and I've linked them here. If we move to scholarly ability, I give an overview of my research and the themes in it. And then you'll see that I just sort of put into categories what happened each year, because, you know, when you're doing research, some years it's, you know, getting the approval from the research committee and then getting things in place. And then the next year you actually have publications to show for it, or sometimes longer than a year, depending on. And so kind of outline that process there, and then put my publications in one folder where people can access them. And then in the next tab, I have presentations, because in addition to research presentations, I'm also invited sometimes into school districts to support retreats or professional development that schools are engaged in. And so some of those fall more into the category of presentations than actual a research project, so to speak. So trying to show a little bit of flexibility, right? Depending on our discipline, we have to use this structure creatively to be able to showcase the work that we're doing, either in our research area or out in the field with the practitioners that are doing some of the work that we also teach about here on campus. And then the last two tabs are the, effectiveness and service, of course, and continuing growth. And in the service area, I tried to organize mine into the, first my department, and, the first couple years you really focus on service to your department, and then School of Ed, finally the university as a whole. And then for me in education, looking to what am I doing out in the community related to education in school districts, the P12 space, and then also statewide. And as I'll reinforce what Nick just said, I'm happy to share my link to this. And I'll also just quickly give you a peek at one of the things that I learned converting my folders to a Google site was to make sure that all of my materials were in a similar location. So I wasn't pulling from multiple folders within my Google Drive, because permissions become really important, right? And access. So I'll just say, keeping it all in one space. I learned the hard way when I moved to this the first year. So to help others avoid that, I would suggest making sure you just keep it all in one place. And with that, I will stop. And if there aren't questions, we can turn it over to Rebecca and then open it up at the end, because I know Rebecca's at that next stage in the process.
Looks like we'll just keep rolling. So hi, everyone. If you don't know me, I'm Rebecca Mushter, and I'm a faculty member in the Department of Art and Design. And I just recently went up for a promotion to full and just found out on Friday that I got the promotion. So I have been through the process here in kind of every stage. And so the couple things that I started when there was paper, first of all, and it was required to be paper. So I still have my file box, right? Like full of papers and binders and things. And I'm very happy to have shed those and don't have those anymore. But like both Nick and Tamara, like I have a digital system now too. Mine's a little bit different. My discipline's a bit different. So my research is different. I do a combination of publications, exhibitions, and a wide variety of other activities, community projects and things. And so one of the challenges I always had at each of these moments was determining where my work fit into those categories, because I tried to align the work that I was doing so that everything kind of jived nicely. And so sometimes it was hard to categorize a project as being a teaching activity or a scholarship activity, because it might have components of both. Or maybe that was also service because of the kind of activity that I was doing. And much of my work kind of had that complication to it. And so I struggled over and over again when I was doing this work. And so often it took me a while. I'd start with like, what are the projects? And then I would pull out the pieces that were mostly teaching and then pull out the pieces that were mostly community. But I would indicate, like, as discussed in this section, you can find more here. And then this is the part that's related to this topic. So if you find yourself in a situation like that, I'm happy to chat through like how I got my head around it, because I found it very annoying to try to put things into categories where I didn't feel like my work spoke to those categories very effectively. One of the best things I did for myself, but it took me a while to get there, was to create a Google Doc for my CV. And by doing so, I have a living document that I can update instantly. I just go to my Google Drive, search for CV, quick put in whatever's new. And so I'm much easier at kind of keeping this up to date now. And so this was a move that was really helpful, was moving to kind of an electronic CV in a cloud system. This is my, I went up for tenure and promotion in 2016. And so this is my promotion folder from then, which also had significant print materials at that time. So it probably isn't as detailed as my colleagues here, but this is what mine looked like. You'll notice that mine is not organized in the same way in terms of the numbers, right? Instead, we had kind of a small binder and a large binder of support materials. And the small binder would have things like the annual activity report, my CV, and then the summary letter, the letter requesting a promotion, right? And those would be the small things. And then there would be a binder that would have the details in it, right? And so I would just make folders for things that were related to the particular topics. The way that I organized my materials was really in a Google document, and then I exported it however I needed to for whatever purpose, right? Whoever needed it, whatever format they requested in. So I now basically had a document that was a Google Doc that had hyperlinks in it and hypertext, and it follows exactly the order. And I'll put this in the chat in case you guys don't know where this is, because it's super helpful. On the Provost site is the criteria for personnel decisions for the institution. And it has like an organization to it. 1, 2, these are the numbers they were just showing you, right? But under each of these numbers, there are letters, right, in a further structure. And so I literally just have a Google document that has those same letters and numbers in it. And I would just write it up that way. So, you know, for example, here's the teaching section, and then I would have kind of the curriculum section. And I would just hyperlink to the relevant materials so that it was easy for someone to see the evidence because it was hyperlinked. And the same thing here with, you know, I did each of my classes, peer observations, etc. So very similar to what everyone else was doing, but I just did it in a single Google Doc as my kind of summary of activities. And I did that for both promotion to associate and promotion to full. I found one of the things most mystifying about applying for full is that there's a lot less documentation about what should be included for full. There's a lot more materials for tenure and promotion to associate, and a lot of these workshops tend to focus on that. So every time there was a workshop to go up for full, even like before I got tenure, I would go to them to learn about like who was going up and what their materials look like. And I found that to be really helpful because if you dig around in your department, I know in my department, the material, like the criteria is like a lot less clear. It's just like a lot less detailed. I made notes about all the things I was going to suggest after having gone through the process, right? Because it's like for the next person, these are all the things that would have been helpful that I like had to ask around or I was surprised by. And one of the things that's different is needing letters from outside the institution of support. And so that's an important detail that you might want to be aware of and thinking about as you kind of move from associate to full. And thinking about the kinds of scholarship and work that you're doing that goes beyond the institution, maybe to SUNY and beyond. Those are the kinds of things that they're looking for at the full level. And yeah, I mean, I think those are the key details. One of the things that the three of us discussed when we were first meeting was how isolating the process of putting these materials together can be. And you know, it's helpful to make sure that you make connections with people across the university. And I found it really helpful to find people outside my department to like ask them about what to include or how to organize in addition to people in my department. Obviously, each discipline's a bit different, but it was helpful to kind of get some outside input on my teaching as well. And so I highly recommend finding opportunities to work on projects with people outside your department. And that's what helps you kind of make those connections across the institution. The other thing that we talked about was departmental requirements, and not all departments have very explicit criteria, but I know mine and Nick's do. Tamara,
Yeah, so I think of the three of us, I probably had the least specificity beyond the university, and that's why I mentioned the conversations that I had were really important with my department chair, with the dean. And I also, when I came on board, was assigned a mentor, someone who was in my department who had been at the university for a long time. And so she provided me with guidance as well. And so I would also echo what Rebecca just said, that coming to a couple of these sessions, I had someone outside of the School of Ed and in the School of Ed, but different department. We connected for the same reasons, right? To look at materials, to give each other feedback, that kind of thing. It's important.
And I think the one thing that we all discovered was it was much easier if you have some sort of living document that you're updating on a more regular basis. And if you do that, even if it's just like vague notes to yourself, right, which was barely what I did, right? Like I barely had that. Then it would usually take a couple of days in January to put materials together for the year, if you're kind of doing that. Right, is that fair to say? I think that's what we all agreed on. It took a couple of like full days of work.
Yes, especially if we're keeping track of things all along. Yes.
And a reminder that if you want to go up for DSI, which is important because that adds like salary to your base, that is a much smaller process. It's a kind of short letter. I think it's limited to 2 pages. Same idea, but short. Those are due in the fall. But to qualify, you have to fill out that really fun report in APHIS that takes a really long time. And it takes a lot more time than it does to keep up my like Google Doc CV. But to qualify for that kind of raise, you do need to make sure you get that in, and that deadline is June 4th. So I think we wanted to open up, we wanted to save most of our time for questions and discussion as kind of whatever people needed that came to the session, what they were hoping to get. So I think we can just open it up for questions and discussion. Or not.
I'll say one thing maybe while people are thinking. I noticed that like we're seem to all be avid Google Drive users. Makes sense given our university, but I'll just say that I've really liked using Google Drive desktop. So that, if you were wondering why mine looked different compared to others, that's because I am using a Google Drive desktop to sync a folder system on my computer to Drive. And I'll just share my screen for a quick sec.
I do that too, Nick. I just happen to show the one in the browser.
Yeah, so I love it. Like if you notice all these things here, little clouds, so these are all just hyperlinks, right? I mean, it acts like a folder system that I'm used to, but it also syncs it to Drive. So whenever I get a new computer, I can just move. It won't be a big deal. But that's why mine looks a little bit different.
It does make it easy when you have that synced, because then it's just like saving something on your computer. It's not like a lot of extra steps. So if you're using, you know, Word or some other application to put your materials together, it's really easy.
Yeah.
So I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but like Michael or Aaron or whoever's in the physical room, is there anything in particular that you wanted to hear more about? Or what you were kind of expecting out of today's session? We weren't entirely sure what people were going to expect out of today's session, so. Okay, so I would say, I'll say on behalf of the 3 of us, I think any of us would be more than willing to chat with anybody if you want to reach out to us. And I know that we would be happy to share our materials, as are many of our colleagues.
Yes.
You'd be surprised at how generous our colleagues are with sharing their materials. All right.
Yeah, I would echo that.
Well, thanks for coming.
Thanks, everybody. Oh my God.